Hey everybody, welcome to the shop. Finally got my mic working again, so we have the voiceover back and I'll be happy to explain some of the things I'm doing on this part of the build. So this is the Allmen trumpet that I'm working on for a client, and it really has a lot of slide issues, and in this part we'll diagnose many of those and really try to get to the bottom of what's going on. A lot of what you'll see me do in this video is diagnosing certain problems, kind of down in order from the likelihood that they are causing these issues, and also which method would be easiest to implement and cheapest in terms of shop time. So right here, all I'm doing is getting a feel for the resistance that this slide has at particular points on the slide and trying to determine if that is an issue with the legs of the slide or the receivers of the slide. I decide that I need to pretty much take off all of these slides and go about this a very particular way in hand lapping and getting sure that all of the tubes are round and not any dents inside of them. So now that I've got the tuning slide receiver off, I will get the third slide legs off, and then I will be able to really dig into what is going wrong with these slides. Here I'm just preparing these knuckles for a later stage in the process by cleaning up some of that extra solder that's on there. Later I will sand them to be more accepting of that solder. Here I'm pouring in some water. This is kind of just a quench tank to cool down the parts so that I can handle them sooner. They're not heated up very much, and I'm not affecting any of the annealing that they've been through at this point. It's just so that I can handle them more easily. Like I said, I always move down the list in order of likelihood and ease of repair. So I have decided to start buffing these slide legs to see if that is the issue, and I start with the outer slide leg here just because I know I'm going to be worried about the aesthetics, and it's just the one that I picked up. So here you can see kind of the condition before. I'm going to have to get rid of all that lacquer and the uneven wear, and that's what this buffing will do. Normally I would use a higher grit compound on here, but I just couldn't find my white rouge, so I used some of the brown rouge, and it just extends the time that I have to be on the buffing wheel. Here is the main tuning slide receiver, and you can see some of the discoloration and the lacquer at that point as well. So I'll just clean this up with some degreaser and give you a look at what these new polished parts look like. I always really like the look of buffed nickel. I think it's very pleasing, and I've always got to keep my eye forward onto the aesthetics of the final project because I am still building out a lot of my tools and materials. So doing some of these processes earlier in the stages makes it easier for me to ensure that I have the final build of the horn in mind. At this point, I am shifting gears to making sure that these slides operate very smoothly, and again, I think that them being out of round is the most likely thing right now. Just very slightly, the uneven pressure on the walls can cause them to be slow and very sluggish as you use them. So I just use that slide tube expander a little bit, and I'm using some light pressure and kind of using it in a way that will get it to not really expand the tube necessarily, but it's more kind of burnishing it from the inside. I did notice some extra solder that was in the end of this tube, so I just take kind of a knife and scrape that out of there. This whole process is somewhat tedious, and later in the video it only gets more so when I have to start hand lapping these slides. But as you can see from this, I believe I've kind of got it back into round, and here I'm just diagnosing the new fit and into the slide tube receiver with the leg that is there. So I click this together over and over in the orientation that it would be on the trumpet with the, you can see the screw there that's going through that retaining area, and that's how it would be on the horn. I'm feeling a very slight click, basically is how I can describe it, in an odd place. So I want to figure out what that's about. The most likely thing is that there may be a very small dent or something in here, so I stick this part on the slide tube expander just as something to hold it, and I start using the actual slide itself to start kind of burnishing at that area. This is a pretty good solution because it actually mates these parts together really well in terms of their wear pattern, so they will operate very smoothly together as long as you keep them in the orientation that you burnish them in. You can see that I'm kind of moving it in an interesting way in a pattern, and that's just kind of to average out some of the wear so that it is even across the entire circumference of the slide. So at this point, I start to suspect that there is another problem with the receiver of the tube, and I take it off and start to try to expand that or burnish that area again right near the end, because the clicking I'm feeling is only towards the very end of the travel of the slide. So that's why I am paying attention to this end of the receiver. So now I'm just getting a sense for where that last spot of wear is, or maybe it's a dent or something. It's too small to see, and I'm not exactly sure what's going on. So at this point, I get this back onto the tube mandrel, and I grab kind of a nylon hammer, and I'm just trying to apply some light pressure to this so that I could lift any small imperceptible dents out of this. As I'm trying to figure out where this last bit of attention on this slide needs to be, it's starting to get a little bit frustrating because most of the slide feels really good, and visually I can't see anything or even like feel anything if I'm touching the slide with my fingers. There's just something about it that I know it's just not as smooth as glass and won't operate the way that it's supposed to. So at this point, I do decide to continue kind of hand lapping it, and I'm using a bit of the buffing compound, the same one that I use on the wheel, and I'm just using that with a little bit of oil in there to kind of thin it out and make sure that it's evenly going around. And again, I'm using the slide in an orientation that will average out the resistance on the whole entire slide. It's getting very smooth at this point with this spinning motion that I was able to do, and now I need to figure out if this is enough. So I want to get all of this compound off, as it is slightly abrasive, and I don't want that to remain in there and affect how this slide will operate ultimately. So I start cleaning it off with the degreaser, getting down into the slide with some Q-tips and the degreaser. And then I will apply some petroleum jelly to this just as a quick lubricant, and that's going to give me a really good sense of how it's going to operate when it's actually on the horn. The idea here is that when this slide leg is fully operational on its own, then I've kind of isolated one of the variables that could be causing the issue. And the next part of this series is going to start to explore the setting of these slide legs square and parallel to make sure that that is not what is causing the problem. So after I felt how this was going to operate if I kept it at that stage, I decided to go back in for just some final hand lapping on this part in the orientation that the part would be in on the trumpet, and I think that really helped kind of finalize how this would operate. At this point in the project, it's really starting to stretch some of my technical knowledge at this point in my journey, and in the next part we'll explore some of the other challenges that this horn was giving me. These slides were well built originally, but sometimes this tune-up is required with just some of the normal wear that happens with age. But in the meantime, if you would like to see more videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Thanks for stopping by the shop.